The year is 1943, January 7th. New York City lies beneath a suffocating blanket of snow, each flake falling like ash from some distant cosmic fire. The wind howls through the canyons of steel and stone, rattling the windows of the New Yorker hotel with the persistence of a ghost seeking entry. Up here, on the 33rd floor in room 3327, the world feels suspended in amber, quiet, preserved, untouchable. Can you smell it? The faint ozone in the air, the dust of old papers, the metallic tang of a radiator hissing its last warmth into the darkness. A single filament bulb casts amber shadows across worn carpet, its light trembling like a dying star. Outside, the city that never sleeps pulses with electric current, his current, flowing through cables buried beneath frozen streets, illuminating a world that has already forgotten its creator. In this modest room, surrounded by notebooks filled with equations no one will understand for decades, a man lies dying, not in glory, not in recognition, but in the profound solitude that had been both his sanctuary and his prison. Nikola Tesla, the man who gave humanity the 20th century, departs as he lived, alone with his thoughts, his visions, and the soft cooing of pigeons at his window. You, lying there in your own darkness, understand this feeling. The weight of thoughts that circle like vultures, the exhaustion of being perpetually misunderstood. The cold indifference of a world that celebrates the loud while ignoring the luminous. Tesla knew this burden intimately. He spent his life conversing with invisible forces, electromagnetic fields, cosmic frequencies, the very architecture of reality, while others dismissed him as mad. Tonight we will walk through his mind not to celebrate genius, but to find solace in its shadows. Let his obsessions quiet yours. Let the hum of his alternating current carry you toward the peace he rarely found. Close your eyes. The snow is falling. Tesla is waiting to guide you home. Let us dissolve the present moment entirely. Allow the walls of your room to fade into the mists of history. We travel now to July 9th, 1856, to the remote village of Smiljan, perched on the edge of the Austrian Empire where the Velebit Mountains rise like ancient guardians against an indifferent sky. It is precisely midnight. The air hangs thick and electric, pregnant with the tension that precedes revelation. Above a modest Orthodox parsonage, the heavens have torn themselves open in violent display. Picture this scene, rain lashing against wooden shutters with the persistence of desperate fingers. The smell of wet earth and ozone creeping beneath the door, thunder rolling across the valleys with such force that it shakes dust from the rafters. Lightning splits the darkness in brilliant, bone-white flashes, illuminating the mountains in stark relief. Inside this tempest, by the trembling light of an oil lamp, a woman labors to bring forth new life while the very cosmos seems to announce its arrival. As the church bells tolled midnight, a child drew his first breath. Nikola Tesla entered the world not gently, but amid nature's most violent symphony. The midwife, shaped by centuries of superstition, recoiled at the omen. To be born during such chaos was considered a curse. This child, she whispered into the flickering shadows, will be a child of darkness. But Tesla's mother, Uka, exhausted, yet possessed of prophetic clarity, lifted her head and spoke with quiet certainty. No. He is a child of light. Consider the profound weight of that moment. Before this infant had opened his eyes, the fundamental tension of his existence had been declared. Darkness and light, chaos and illumination, destruction and creation. You, lying there in your own darkness, understand this duality intimately. You too were born into a storm, perhaps not of thunder and rain, but of the mind. You know what it means to feel things more intensely than those around you, to carry a nervous system that behaves less like a calm pond and more like a charged antenna. The racing thoughts that keep you awake, the anxiety that hums beneath your skin like high-voltage wires, this is your inheritance, your atmospheric condition. When the world calls this a disorder, remember Tesla's mother's wisdom. The storm is not your curse, it is your origin. The lightning that crackles across your consciousness at 3 a.m. is not darkness, it is energy-seeking ground. It is power waiting to be understood, channeled, and transformed. Tesla spent his life learning to speak the language of electricity, to tame the very forces that announced his birth. He took the chaotic energy of lightning and transformed it into the steady current that now powers the civilization surrounding your restless body. Your intensity, your sensitivity, your refusal to sleep easily, these are not signs of brokenness. They are the raw materials of illumination. Like the child born in the storm who became the master of it, you carry within you the same capacity for transformation. The thunder in your chest is not your destruction. It is simply the sound of power, waiting to be grounded. Tonight, we will learn gently how to find that ground, how to channel the storm into something beautiful and finally, mercifully still. In the hushed sanctuary of his childhood bedroom, where shadows pooled like spilled ink between heavy wooden furniture, young Nikola Tesla was not granted the mercy of ordinary darkness. Picture him there, a boy of 7, lying beneath rough linen sheets while the velvet winds whispered against diamond-paned windows. The room smells of beeswax candles and old paper, the air thick with the weight of approaching storm. But the tempest that truly mattered raged not outside, but within the delicate architecture of his developing mind. Without warning, the darkness would explode into blinding white light, not the gentle illumination of dawn, but a searing flash that obliterated the boundary between internal and external reality. In these moments, Tesla's consciousness became a theatre where the curtain between imagination and the physical world had been violently torn away. Faces would dissolve into cascading geometric patterns. Objects would materialize in the air before him, so vivid and tangible that his small hands would reach out, expecting to touch cold metal or warm flesh, finding only empty space that mocked his certainty. You know this violation intimately, though perhaps you have never named it so precisely. You, who lie awake while your mind constructs elaborate scenarios of catastrophe and failure. You, whose thoughts arrive with such vivid intensity that your body responds as though the imagined threat were standing at the foot of your bed. The racing thoughts that keep you captive in the small hours, these are your flashes of light burning against the canvas of night. Your overactive mind is not your enemy, it is merely electricity seeking ground, power awaiting direction. For years, Tesla cowered beneath this relentless cinema of the mind. The visions terrified him, arriving uninvited like intruders breaking into the fragile house of his peace. But then came his moment of alchemical transformation. He stopped fleeing the images and stepped into them, becoming the architect of his own mental landscape. He discovered he could summon objects in his consciousness, rotate them in three-dimensional space, examine every angle with the precision of a master craftsman. The nightmare theater became a laboratory of pure thought. Tesla evolved this into what he called his mental workshop, a sanctuary more real to him than the physical world. He would construct entire machines in the architecture of his imagination, set them running for weeks, then return to inspect the imaginary bearings for signs of wear. His mental laboratory operated according to the same physical laws as external reality, yet he could access it anywhere, walking through city streets, sitting in cafes, lying sleepless in his bed. The prison of his overactive mind had become his greatest sanctuary. Listen carefully. Your intrusive thoughts, your anxiety spirals, your inability to quiet the relentless machinery of cognition, these are not defects. They are raw processing power operating at a frequency most cannot sustain. Tonight, we practice Tesla's method. When thoughts arrive, do not resist them. Instead, construct a workshop in your consciousness. Build the walls. Are they stone, wood, or something softer? Place each worry on a mental workbench. Disassemble it with cool, scientific detachment. See how even the most terrifying thought reveals itself to be merely energy, merely information, merely light flickering across the screen of awareness. The flash that once blinded you can become the lamp that guides you toward the blessed darkness of sleep, where your mental laboratory finally closes for the night, tools resting, blueprints folded, machines cooling into perfect healing silence. June 1884. The steamship City of Richmond exhales its final breath of Atlantic steam into the humid air of New York Harbor, its iron hull groaning against rotting pilings like some exhausted leviathan seeking rest. The air hangs thick with coal dust, the briny rot of fish markets, and that peculiar metallic tang of a nation forging itself into the future with hammer blows and ambition. From the belly of this vessel emerges a tall, angular figure in a worn black coat, 28 years old, dark hair severed by a precise European part, eyes burning with the feverish intensity of arc lights. Nikola Tesla steps onto American cobblestones, carrying the terrifying inventory of the dispossessed. In his pocket, exactly 4 cents, the sum total of his material worth in this new world. Beside this meager currency rests a book of Serbian poetry, its pages soft with handling, and a crumpled letter of introduction to Thomas Edison that reads, "I know 2 great men. You are one of them. The other is this young man. He has been robbed during the crossing, stripped of his luggage and savings, left with nothing but the invisible architecture of his own genius and the weight of words no American tongue can properly pronounce. To the bustling crowds of Manhattan, he is nobody, just another desperate immigrant to be swallowed by the machinery of the Gilded Age." Vendors shout in languages that collide and fragment around him. Horse-drawn carriages clatter past with the impatience of a river that does not pause for those who stumble at its edge. The city seems alive but not welcoming, more like some enormous organism that will either digest him or spit him out onto the unforgiving streets. You know this violation intimately. Even if you have never crossed an ocean, you, who walk into rooms and feel immediately displaced, as though everyone else received an instruction manual for existence that somehow never reached your hands. You may navigate fluorescent-lit offices instead of gas-lit streets, scroll through glowing screens rather than clutch handwritten letters, but the alienation remains identical. The modern soul knows what Tesla knew. One can be surrounded by bodies, yet feel utterly uninhabited, like an abandoned house with all the lights still burning. This is the genesis of what the clinical world calls imposter syndrome, but let us name it more tenderly. You are not a fraud. You are a traveler. Like Tesla clutching his book of poetry like a talisman against the vulgar noise of commerce, you have arrived in a harsh environment carrying sensitivities that feel like liabilities. You edit yourself in conversations, dim the brightness of your inner world, so others are not blinded or unsettled by its intensity. Yet in this ache lies quiet nobility. Tesla's exile, both external and internal, became the crucible that refined his thought into something crystalline and eternal. Standing at the margins allowed him to perceive the invisible currents shaping reality, truths hidden from those safely embedded in the center of ordinary life. Your displacement is not a defect, but evidence of depth in a shallow world. Tonight, as you lie awake feeling foreign in your own existence, remember, some souls are not meant to fit seamlessly into the available spaces. They are meant to witness, to observe, to carry poetry in a world obsessed with profit. Your estrangement is the silent proof that you were designed for deeper questions, gentler rhythms, and a more compassionate kind of belonging. The year is 1886, and Manhattan trembles beneath an invisible war. Along the gaslit avenues, where carriages clatter over wet cobblestones, a new kind of battlefield hums with electric tension. In basement power stations, massive generators pound their relentless rhythm, the heartbeat of Thomas Edison's direct current empire. The light they produce is harsh, yellow, unforgiving, trapped in small pockets of illumination that fade quickly with distance. This is the philosophy of brute force. Push harder, burn brighter. Never yield to the natural inclination toward rest. Into this world of linear insistence steps Nikola Tesla, carrying within his mind a different vision entirely. Where Edison sees power as conquest, Tesla perceives it as dance. His alternating current does not fight against the fundamental rhythms of existence, it embraces them. Act flows forward and back, like breath, like tide, like the eternal oscillation between waking and sleep. It transforms itself gracefully, stepping up voltage to leap across vast distances, then stepping down to illuminate homes hundreds of miles away. It succeeds not through resistance, but through surrender to the natural law of alternation. This was more than an engineering dispute. It was a clash between two philosophies of existence, and that same war rages tonight within the exhausted architecture of your own nervous system. Feel it there, the grinding insistence of direct current living. Your modern world demands you push in one unrelenting direction. Produce, perform, respond, achieve. Emails arrive with the expectation of instant reply. Notifications pulse without regard for circadian rhythm. Your thoughts, like Edison's current, are forced down a single merciless track. What next? What next? What next? The anxiety humming beneath your skin is not a personal failing, it is the sound of biological machinery protesting its misuse. You are experiencing the friction of trying to force a direct current lifestyle onto an alternating current soul. Your heart was designed to beat in rhythm, systole and diastole, contraction and release. Your lungs were crafted for cycles, inspiration and expiration, filling and emptying. Even your brain waves are meant to oscillate from the high-frequency beta of anxious thinking down through alpha's gentle idling into the deep, restorative delta of dreamless sleep. Yet, You have been taught to resist this natural downward curve, to fight the biological imperative to power down. The insomnia that holds you captive is often the echo of a day lived entirely in Edison's mode. Constant drive, no retreat, no gentle reversal into stillness. The current continues to push long after the task is complete, finding no outlet, no transformer, no place to disperse its accumulated force. Tonight, we practice Tesla's revolution within your own flesh. As you breathe in, imagine energy rising like voltage, stepping up through a transformer. As you breathe out, feel it fall, softening, dispersing into the darkness around you. Each breath becomes a tiny alternation, a quiet rejection of the culture that glorifies exhaustion and calls it virtue. The war of currents was decided long ago. Tesla's system illuminated continents, while Edison's was relegated to batteries and museum displays. Your body already knows which frequency heals. Stop pushing against the natural rhythm that wants to carry you towards sleep. Let yourself become alternating current, flowing, reversing, flowing again. The oscillation that once seemed like weakness is actually the very mechanism that allows energy to travel far, to sustain itself, to find its way home to the blessed darkness where all currents finally rest. In the upper floors of the Gerlach Hotel, where Manhattan's relentless ambition softens to a distant hum like ocean waves heard through cathedral walls, Nikola Tesla has constructed something the world cannot understand, a deliberate fortress of silence. The year is 1891, and while the gilded elite gather in ballrooms below, their laughter sharp as crystal, their conversations a symphony of social performance, Tesla sits alone in a room illuminated only by the steady glow of his own electric inventions. The light casts no warmth, only clarity. The air carries the metallic scent of ozone and the mustiness of well-worn books. There are no photographs on the mantel, no letters awaiting reply, no evidence that another soul has ever crossed this sacred threshold. Be alone, he once declared with the quiet certainty of a man stating natural law. That is the secret of invention. Be alone, that is when ideas are born. This was not the bitter manifesto of a wounded hermit, but the hard-won wisdom of someone who had learned to distinguish between two states the careless world conflates: loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is deprivation, the ache of wanting connection and finding only indifference. Solitude, when chosen rather than endured, is abundance of a kind invisible to those who measure wealth in companions and conversation. You know this distinction intimately, though perhaps the modern world has taught you to fear it. Loneliness arrives like a thief in your darkest hours, whispering that your isolation proves some fundamental inadequacy. It feeds on the glowing screens that promise community but deliver only its simulation, shallow exchanges, performative caring, the exhausting obligation to be perpetually available. Your smartphone, that luminous tether to 6 billion strangers, ensures you are never truly alone, yet prevents you from ever achieving genuine solitude. Tesla understood what we have forgotten. Constant connection is not intimacy, it is interference. While others sought validation in crowded salons, he retreated into what he called the monastery of the mind, that sacred space where the static of human expectation finally fades, allowing the subtle frequencies of truth to emerge. His solitude was not exile, but laboratory, not withdrawal from life, but withdrawal into its deeper currents where restoration occurs. Tonight, you have permission to close the door without guilt. The messages will wait like snow accumulating against windows. And the world will not collapse in your absence. Imagine your bedroom not as a cell, but as Tesla's study, walls lined with invisible books containing every memory you carry, every unspoken idea. The silence you fear is actually the absence of static, the clearing of frequencies, so your own thoughts can finally transmit without interference. Consider the empty chair, the darkened phone, the closed door. These are not symbols of abandonment, but instruments of protection. In this chosen solitude, you are not less connected. You are connected to something older and more essential than the frantic buzzing of the social world. There is nothing you must prove, no one you must manage, no performance required. Let the fortress walls rise around you. In this sanctuary, defended against the invasion of other people's urgency, your nervous system can finally stand down from its exhausting guard duty. The room is not empty, it is filled with you. And that, Tesla knew, is finally enough. Close your eyes and feel the invisible architecture surrounding you at this very moment. The smartphone resting beside your pillow, silent yet somehow still demanding attention. Wi-Fi signals passing through your walls like restless spirits carrying fragments of 1,000 urgent conversations. The electrical current humming through copper veins hidden behind plaster, powering the lamp you extinguished moments ago. This seamless web of wireless connection, this instant access to humanity's accumulated knowledge, this ability to speak across continents with the casual ease of thought, all of it emerged first as vision in the mind of a man who died penniless, alone, and largely forgotten. Picture Tesla in his laboratory on East Houston Street, the year 1893. Around him, copper coils rise like metal trees, their branches reaching toward the ceiling, spitting violet arcs of electricity that smell of rain and ozone. While others marveled at the novelty of the telegraph, he described with prophetic precision a future where we shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance, with devices so small they could fit in a vest pocket. He envisioned what we now call smartphones decades before the first computer would flicker to life. He spoke of a world system where information would flow freely through the air, accessible to anyone, anywhere, a perfect description of the internet that now keeps you awake at 3 a.m. He dreamed of harnessing solar energy, of wind turbines spinning on distant plains, of remotely controlled devices that spectators would mistake for witchcraft. Every convenience you take for granted, every technology you scroll through when sleep refuses to come, first existed as electrical impulse in Tesla's restless, luminous mind. He was walking through the gaslit streets of the 19th century while carrying, in the quiet vaults of his consciousness, blueprints for the 21st. Yet here unfolds the beautiful, devastating irony that should grant you unexpected comfort tonight. The man who invented our hyper-connected world died in the most profound isolation imaginable. He dreamed of a planet unified by invisible threads of communication, yet ate dinner alone every night, speaking only to waiters who knew not to disturb his ritual. The architect of global connection remained distant from nearly every human being he encountered. You understand this paradox viscerally. You hold in your hand the culmination of his vision, a device that connects you to everyone and no one simultaneously. Your anxiety is not merely fear, it is a kind of reluctant prophecy. scanning for consequences, rehearsing futures no one asked you to predict. The technology meant to cure loneliness delivered only its sophisticated amplification. Tesla's tragedy offers strange solace. Even the inventor of our connected age could not engineer away the soul's fundamental aloneness. Tonight, honor him by doing what he struggled to do: disconnect. The Wi-Fi signals can be ignored. The notifications can wait. The tomorrow that Tesla invented can pause while you retreat into something older, simpler. The dark, the breath, the quiet beating of a single unhurried heart finally at rest. In the dying light of 1901, where the Atlantic exhales its ancient breath against the windswept shores of Long Island, a tower rises like a monument to impossible dreams. Wardenclyffe, Tesla's cathedral of wireless transmission, stands against the indifferent sky like a gargantuan tuning fork driven into the earth. Its skeletal copper dome reaching toward the stars with the desperate ambition of Babel. The structure looms over dunes of scrubgrass and silence, its shadow merging with the dark line of pines that have witnessed centuries of human folly and brilliance in equal measure. Tesla stands at its base, his black coat whipping in the salt wind, gazing upward at the framework that will, he believes, transform the very nature of human existence. Around him, the air smells of ozone and possibility, that metallic tang that precedes lightning. He does not yet know this tower will never fulfill its purpose, that investors will abandon him like fair-weather friends, that his dream will collapse into bankruptcy and bitter silence. Tonight, in the sanctuary of your darkened room, we concern ourselves not with his failure, but with his prophecy. For you are living within its shadow. Tesla envisioned what he called the world wireless system, the entire planet wrapped in an invisible web of electromagnetic energy, power flowing freely through the Earth's crust and the ionosphere above. When wireless is perfectly applied, he declared with the certainty of a man who had touched the future, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain, capable of response in every one of its parts. He imagined humanity unified by ethereal threads that transcended borders and oceans, each person connected to every other through the very atmosphere they breathed. No wires, no meters, no artificial scarcity, just pure energy available to anyone who planted a simple receiver in the ground, like harvesting electricity from the soil itself. This was connection as liberation, technology as the great equalizer. The poorest window would glow as gently as the richest chandelier. Information would flow like water, finding its level, accessible to all, owned by none. In Tesla's vision, the invisible web binding humanity together was not a marketplace of destruction, but a circulatory system of shared power, a nervous system for the species itself. You, lying there in the blue-lit aftermath of scrolling, understand what Tesla could not foresee. His dream has become your nightmare. The invisible tether he imagined as mercy has wrapped itself around your throat like a noose of obligation. Feel it there, the phantom vibration against your leg, even when your phone rests silent on the nightstand. The muscle memory of checking notifications, that compulsive reaching that happens before conscious thought can intervene. The exhausting weight of being perpetually available, responsive, engaged with the emotional emergencies of people you have never touched, never smelled, never sat beside in comfortable silence. You have become less a person than a junction box, a switching station for other people's urgency. Every notification is a tiny tug on those invisible threads. a reminder that you exist not simply as a self but as a service. The Wi-Fi signal passes through your body at this very moment, invisible, unfelt, yet measurably present. Electromagnetic frequencies pulse through the walls, through your flesh, carrying fragments of a million demands that have nothing to do with your actual life. Someone halfway across the world is angry about something, and their anger arrives in your pocket, expecting acknowledgement, demanding a response you do not have the energy to give. Tesla dreamed of unity. We have achieved only simultaneity. He imagined shared power. We experience only shared anxiety, our nervous systems synchronized in a global hum of low-grade panic. The huge brain he envisioned has become a collective headache, and you are one of its throbbing neurons, unable to rest because the network never sleeps. Tonight, we perform the ritual Tesla himself practiced when the world's demands became too heavy. Despite inventing the principles that bind us, he understood the necessity of severing the connection. He would disappear for weeks into his laboratory, instructing staff to ignore any knock at the door. He knew that to create, to heal, to truly think, one must cut the cord. Visualize the invisible tethers extending from your chest, your forehead, your solar plexus, glowing filaments connecting you to your work, your social circles, the news cycle, the expectations of others. See them pulsing with frantic light, draining your energy like parasitic vines, pulling your attention outward into the chaotic world. Now imagine a pair of silver shears in your hand, their blades soft as moonlight. With gentle precision, cut the first cord, the obligation to reply immediately. Watch the light fade. Feel the sudden release of tension in your shoulders. Cut the next thread, the fear of missing something important. Then the next, the need to witness every global tragedy in real time. With each severed connection, the room grows quieter, darker, more peaceful. The work messages can wait like snow accumulating against windows. The social feeds will continue their frantic churning without your participation. The world's urgency dissolves like morning fog. You are not abandoning humanity, you are reclaiming your sovereignty. What remains is the original connection Tesla truly sought. The one that requires no technology, no infrastructure, no transmission towers. You are connected to the breathing darkness, to the patient earth beneath your bed, to the ancient rhythms that existed before electricity hummed through walls. This connection asks nothing, demands nothing, judges nothing. It simply holds you, as gravity holds you, as the night holds all restless things until morning comes. The invisible web dissolves. You are untethered, drifting free in the velvet silence of your own unshared existence, finally, mercifully alone. Watch him now as he walks the gaslit streets of Manhattan, this tall spectre in black moving through the November evening of 1898 with the precision of a human metronome. There is a quiet kind of madness in the way Nikola Tesla navigates the world, though it is invisible to the hurried crowds pressing past him on their way to warm parlors and waiting dinners. Before his foot touches the threshold of the Waldorf Astoria, he must circle the block exactly 3 times, his measured steps tracing invisible sigils in the air, each turn executed at the precise corner where some private geometry demands it. Should an obstacle interrupt this sacred circuit, a delivery wagon blocking the sidewalk, a cluster of evening strollers, he will begin again from the starting point. The entire ritual nullified by a single deviation. Inside the hotel's opulent dining room, the maître knows to prepare his table with exactly 18 napkins, never 17, never 19. Tesla will use each one to polish the already gleaming silverware, wiping and rewiring until it satisfies a standard no one else can perceive, stacking them in careful towers as he calculates the cubic volume of his soup bowl before the first spoonful touches his lips. The numbers 3, 6, and 9 pulse through his consciousness like a divine frequency, a cosmic code embedded in the very architecture of reality. 3, the triangle, the beginning, middle, and end. 6, the hexagon, nature's most efficient shape, the structure of honeycomb and snowflake. 9, the spiral of completion, the number that contains all others within its infinite loop, for when you add any digits and reduce them, eventually all mathematical roads lead back to 9, the eternal circle closing upon itself. To the casual observer, these appear as the compulsive ticks of a mind unraveling under the weight of its own brilliance. But we who lie awake at night counting our own obsessions know better. You, who must check the door lock exactly 4 times before bed. You, who arrange the pillows in a specific configuration that cannot be explained but must not be violated. You, whose thoughts loop in recursive patterns that others dismiss as overthinking, but which feel to you like necessary mathematics, essential calculations that keep some unnamed catastrophe at bay. The clinical world offers you a diagnosis, a neat label that reduces your complexity to pathology, requiring pharmaceutical correction. But Tesla offers a different interpretation entirely. What if these patterns are not symptoms of brokenness, but the soul's attempt to impose order on a universe that operates according to laws we can feel but cannot fully articulate? What if your compulsions are not aberrations, but recognition? Evidence of a nervous system so finely tuned it perceives the underlying rhythms most people are too numb to notice. Consider the natural world that surrounds your anxious humanity. The chambered nautilus grows its shell in a perfect logarithmic spiral. Sunflowers arrange their seeds according to the Fibonacci sequence. Snowflakes form in 6-fold symmetry with such consistency that no chaos can disrupt the pattern. Planets orbit in ellipses, tides rise and fall in predictable rhythm. Your own heart beats in measured intervals that would cease to function if they became random. The universe itself is compulsive, ritualistic, bound by geometric laws that permit no deviation. Your need for pattern is not madness, it is your mind's attempt to create anchors against the terrifying randomness of existence. When you count, when you check, when you arrange objects in configurations that satisfy some unnamed requirement, you are participating in the same impulse that keeps electrons orbiting nuclei, that maintains the delicate balance between gravitational collapse and infinite expansion. Tonight, we transform your compulsion into meditation, your anxiety into sacred geometry. Begin with Tesla's triangle. Visualize it floating in the darkness behind your closed eyes, simple and stable, the strongest shape in nature. Breathe in for 3 seconds, feeling the air fill the 3 chambers of your awareness: body, mind, spirit. Hold for 3 more seconds, letting the oxygen circulate like golden light through your bloodstream. Now expand to the hexagon, 6 sides, 6 angles, the architecture of efficiency and balance. Exhale for 6 seconds, releasing the day's accumulated tension in a slow, measured stream. Feel each second as a side of the hexagon, perfectly proportioned, mathematically pure. Finally, embrace the spiral of 9, the number of completion, of return, of the eternal circle. As you breathe naturally now, count in sets of 9, letting each number dissolve into the next like water flowing downhill. 9 breaths, then 9 more, then 9 again, until the counting becomes rhythm, the rhythm becomes silence, and the silence becomes the geometric heart of peace, where all numbers finally resolve into the blessed zero of sleep. Your rituals are not signs of brokenness, they are the sacred geometry of your survival, the quiet dignity of a mind that refuses to surrender to chaos. In the darkness of your room, surrounded by the measured breathing that has replaced anxious counting, you are not alone. You are participating in the cosmic compulsion toward order, the universal rhythm that holds stars in their courses and carries you, finally, gently, into the perfect mathematics of rest. There exists a particular silence that lives in laboratories after midnight. Not the emptiness of abandoned rooms, but a living hush that vibrates with unfinished experiments and the invisible presence of thoughts too delicate for daylight's clumsy noise. In such silence, Nikola Tesla felt most at home, though the laboratory he truly inhabited existed nowhere on any blueprint of Lower Manhattan. Picture him in his workshop on East Houston Street, the year 1907. The physical coils rest cold and silent, their copper surfaces reflecting the amber glow of a single electric bulb. But while his body occupies this modest space, his consciousness wanders through corridors that have never felt the touch of mortar or the weight of architectural stone. This is his true laboratory, the monastery of pure thought, where he has spent more hours than in any physical location. Close your eyes and witness what Tesla sees. The mental workshop materializes with crystalline clarity, more elaborate than any cathedral raised from stone. Copper coils rise from marble floors, their surfaces reflecting light that has no source. Turbines spin in perfect silence, their blades catching the glow of some interior sun. He can reach out with his mind's hand and feel the temperature of metal that exists only as electrical impulse in his neural tissue. When he constructs a motor in this imaginary space, he sets it running and leaves it there, spinning silently in the background of his thoughts for weeks on end. While he eats dinner, while he walks the streets, while he sleeps, the imaginary turbine continues to turn. A month later, he returns to inspect the bearings for wear patterns that manifest according to the same physical laws governing the external world. This is not mere visualization, it is architecture of consciousness, a parallel reality constructed with such obsessive detail that it rivals and often surpasses the material realm in usefulness and beauty. Here, Tesla is not bound by skeptical investors or the limitations of budget. Materials do not break. Experiments run to completion without interruption. The work proceeds in absolute silence, undisturbed by the chaos of human commerce and social expectation. You know this refuge intimately, though perhaps you have judged it as escapism rather than recognizing it as sanctuary. You, who construct elaborate scenarios in your mind while pretending to listen during meetings. You, who have entire conversations with people who are not present, rehearsing arguments and explanations for situations that may never occur. You, whose richest experiences sometimes happen entirely within the theatre of your own skull, where the seats are always empty, but the performance is magnificent. The world calls this living in your head with dismissive tones, reserved for those who refuse to participate fully in the supposedly real world of mortgages and strategic networking. But Tesla understood what the extroverted world cannot grasp. The inner landscape is not less real than the outer one. It simply operates at a different frequency, accessible only to those willing to turn their attention inward rather than constantly broadcasting outward. Your elaborate inner world is not a symptom of social anxiety or depression, though it may have been born from the wound of feeling perpetually misunderstood. It is a monastery you have built, stone by careful stone, against the invasion of a reality that often feels too harsh, too loud, too relentlessly demanding. The ability to construct rich internal worlds is evidence of a mind that refuses to accept the surface of things, that must create its own depth where none was offered. Tonight, we will not fight your tendency to drift inward, we will consecrate it. Instead of letting your mind run wild with anxiety scenarios, we will consciously build a sanctuary like Tesla's laboratory. Close your eyes and visualize a door in the darkness, heavy, made of ancient wood, bound with iron. This is the entrance to your own monastery of the mind. When you push it open, what do you see? Perhaps a vast library with shelves reaching into infinite shadow, smelling of parchment and candle wax. Perhaps a garden at twilight, where fireflies drift through silver mist. Perhaps a workshop like Tesla's, filled with quiet, humming machines that generate peace instead of electricity. Step inside. Feel the air change, cooler, stiller, charged with a different kind of silence. Here, the anxieties about tomorrow cannot cross the threshold. The regrets of yesterday dissolve in this atmosphere. Walk through the rooms you have built. Touch the surfaces, cool stone, warm wood, the velvet of imaginary chairs. If intrusive thoughts try to follow you here, simply place them on a shelf, or feed them into a machine that grinds them into harmless dust. This is the secret Tesla knew. The physical world is only one version of reality, and often the least interesting one. Your rich inner world is not a place to escape from, it is a place to escape to. It is the monastery where your soul learns to breathe again, safe behind walls that no one else can see, protected by the beautiful, invincible power of your own imagination. The drawbridge rises, the gates close. The external world, with all its noise and judgment, remains outside while you, like Tesla in his luminous workshop, rest in the profound peace of your own constructed sanctuary. The year is 1917, and on the windswept shore of Long Island, where scrub pines bend like penitents before the Atlantic's endless sermon, a dream prepares to die. Wardenclyffe Tower rises 187 feet into the grey November sky. A latticed skeleton of wood and iron crowned with a copper dome that catches the pale light like a fallen moon. Around its base, the red brick laboratory sits shuttered and silent, its windows dark as closed eyes, equipment shrouded beneath canvas like furniture in a house where someone beloved has passed away. The world burns with the fires of the Great War, but here in Shoreham a different kind of tragedy unfolds in the salt-stung silence. Men arrive not to complete the great work, but to destroy it. They carry dynamite and the cold authority of creditors who have grown tired of waiting for returns on revolutionary dreams. Tesla is not here to witness what comes next. He remains in his Manhattan hotel room, feeding pigeons with trembling hands, trying not to imagine the sound that will soon echo across the sound, like the crack of his own heart breaking. But let us step backward through time's corridor to see what this tower was meant to become. In Tesla's luminous vision, Wardenclyffe was not merely a transmission station, but the nerve center of a transformed world. From this single point, wireless energy would flow through the Earth's crust like blood through arteries, emerging wherever humanity needed light, heat, or power. Ships at sea would draw electricity from the very water that buoyed them. Remote villages would glow with the same brilliance as the great cities. The artificial scarcity that kept the poor in darkness would dissolve before the democratic abundance of free energy, unmetered and unowned. Iron rods driven 200 feet into the Long Island soil were designed to tap the planet's own electromagnetic field, to make the ground itself sing with power. The copper dome would catch lightning from passing storms and transform it into gentle current for distant homes. Information would ride these energy waves like leaves on an invisible river, connecting every corner of the earth in instantaneous communion. It was a vision of such staggering benevolence that it terrified the men who profited from scarcity. J.P. Morgan, who had once believed in Tesla's impossible promises, withdrew his support when he realized that free energy offered no mechanisms for control, no meters to read, no bills to collect. Other investors followed, their enthusiasm cooling like metal left too long in winter air. Construction halted, seasons passed. Salt wind gnawed at exposed beams. The great dome, built to channel the very power of heaven, became instead a monument to the world's inability to receive what it most desperately needed. Now, on this bleak afternoon in 1917, the dynamite charges detonate with a sound that seems to crack the sky itself. The tower shudders, leans, and collapses into a tangled ruin of splintered wood and twisted metal. The copper dome lies broken in the mud, no longer reaching toward the stars, but pressed against the indifferent earth, its revolutionary purpose forever unfulfilled. You, lying there in your own darkness, know this landscape of ruins intimately. You understand what it means to carry visions too large for the containers available to hold them. The novel that remains half-written in your laptop, its characters more real to you than your colleagues. The business idea you sketched on napkins during sleepless nights, so clear and necessary, yet unfunded and unrealized. The relationship you poured your soul into building, only to watch it collapse under the weight of poor timing or another person's inability to see what you saw so clearly. The degree you abandoned one semester short of completion when life demanded different choices. Your unfinished projects haunt you in the small hours, whispering accusations of inadequacy, poor judgment, lack of follow-through. The modern world measures success by completion, by products launched and goals achieved, by towers that actually hum with their intended purpose. But Tesla's silent monument invites a different, more generous reading of what it means to attempt the impossible. Consider this: Wardenclyffe never transmitted a single watt of power, yet our world today vibrates with wireless communication, global networks, and energy flowing across vast distances, precisely the reality Tesla envisioned while standing in its shadow. The physical structure died, but the idea walked calmly out of the wreckage and kept going, patient as seeds waiting for the right season to sprout. Your abandoned dreams are not evidence of failure, they are monuments to the courage of reaching beyond the merely possible. Each unfinished project represents a moment when you dared to believe in transformation, when you attempted construction in a world that often rewards only demolition. The novel taught you a new tenderness with language, even unfinished. The business plan sharpened your understanding of your own capabilities. The almost love revealed the true dimensions of your heart. These are not ruins, they are foundations. Tonight, we make peace with the towers that never hummed. Close your eyes and see them rising in the landscape of your memory, all the abandoned dreams, the half-built structures, the visions that collapsed before reaching completion. You have learned to see them as failures, as proof of your inadequacy or poor judgment. But look again with Tesla's eyes. These skeletal towers are not graveyards, they are temples to possibility. Each one stands as testament to your refusal to live entirely within the boundaries of the safe and known. Some towers are meant to remain incomplete, their purpose fulfilled simply by having been imagined, their value measured not in function, but in the beautiful, terrible courage required to begin building them at all. Let them stand there in the twilight of your consciousness, monuments not to failure, but to the holy audacity of dreaming. The tower that never hummed still reaches toward the sky in the realm of what might yet be, still beautiful in its incompletion, still pointing toward a future that exists for now only in the sacred space between what is and what could still become. The dynamite has finished its work. The debris settles into silence. But in that silence, finally, there is peace. The deep rest that comes only when we stop trying to force our visions into a world not yet ready to receive them, and simply let them be what they were always meant to be. Proof that we dared to dream of towers in the first place. The year is 1935, and winter has settled over New York City like a grey shroud, muffling the urgent noise of a world that believes itself to be racing toward progress but cannot see the precipice ahead. In room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel, where the radiator hisses its familiar rhythm against the cold, Nikola Tesla sits by a frost-laced window, watching snowflakes spiral downward through the amber glow of streetlights. His lights, powered by his alternating current, illuminating a civilization that has already forgotten its creator's name. The reporters have come and gone, their notebooks filled with what they consider the eccentric ramblings of an aging inventor. They wanted spectacle, not wisdom, headlines about death rays and earthquake machines, not the quiet warnings of a man who has spent decades living simultaneously in two different centuries. To them, his predictions seemed like the fantasies of a mind finally cracking under the weight of its own brilliance. Pocket-sized devices that would allow instant communication across continents. Flying machines without wings. Energy harvested from sun and wind to power entire cities. A global network where information flows like water, connecting every human consciousness in an invisible web of shared knowledge. But Tesla spoke also of darker prophecies, weapons that could split atoms and level cities in blinding flashes. Surveillance technologies that would make privacy obsolete. A world so interconnected that economic collapse in one nation would cascade through all others like dominoes falling in sequence. The same forces that would liberate humanity would also provide new mechanisms for its enslavement. The journalists smiled politely, jotted down notes they would later discard, and left him alone with his impossible visions. This is the curse of Cassandra, passed down through millennia to those whose minds operate at frequencies the present age cannot yet receive. Tesla was condemned not merely to see the future, but to speak truths that sounded like madness, to offer warnings that arrived too early to be heeded. His prophecies were not mystical intuitions, but engineering specifications for a world that would not exist for another century. He could calculate with geometric precision exactly how the future would unfold, yet he remained powerless to convince his contemporaries to prepare for what he saw as both inevitable and catastrophic. You, lying there in your own darkness, know this burden with an intimacy that aches in your bones at 3 a.m. You are not Tesla, but you carry the same curse in miniature. The exhausting gift of pattern recognition operating at a frequency most people cannot perceive. Your mind is a simulation engine that never shuts down, constantly calculating outcomes, anticipating disasters, seeing connections that others dismiss as coincidence or ignore entirely. You notice the subtle shift in a colleague's behavior that signals project failure months before the crisis hits. You sense the hairline cracks in relationships while everyone else is still celebrating the engagement. You worry about climate collapse, economic instability, and social disintegration while your peers seem content to scroll through endless feeds of carefully curated triviality. The modern world calls this anxiety and prescribes meditation apps and cognitive behavioral therapy as though the problem were a malfunction in your processing rather than the terrible clarity of your vision. But perhaps what you experience is not disorder, but surplus. Intelligence operating without a proper outlet. Perception that has nowhere to go but inward, where it circles like a trapped bird beating its wings against the cage of your skull. You are exhausted not because you are broken, but because you are carrying the weight of tomorrow on shoulders that were only designed to bear the load of today. Your friends may dismiss you as a worrier, but worry is simply prophecy stripped of poetry. When you lie awake rehearsing conversations that will prevent conflicts, calculating lifestyle changes that might avert illness, developing contingency plans for futures no one else seems willing to contemplate, you are not catastrophizing, you are extrapolating from available data, running simulations in the theatre of your mind where others see only the comfortable illusion of the present moment. You are an early warning system, scanning the horizon for approaching storms, while others remain contentedly focused on the weather immediately overhead. This hypervigilance brings its own peculiar exhaustion, the weariness of constantly translating your intuition into language others might understand, only to be met with blank stares or polite dismissal. It is the loneliness of seeing the iceberg while everyone else rearranges deck chairs. The frustration of shouting warnings into a wind that carries your voice away unheard. Like Tesla watching reporters scribble down his predictions with barely concealed skepticism, you have learned that foresight is often indistinguishable from madness to those who lack the eyes to see. Yet Tesla's life offers a gentle permission that echoes across the decades to reach you in your restless vigil. You are not responsible for preventing every disaster you can foresee. The future you have glimpsed will unfold with or without your anxious attendance. The towers you imagined collapsing will fall or stand according to forces beyond your control, and your sleepless nights spent calculating trajectories will not alter their fate by a single degree. The problems you see looming on the horizon will eventually become visible to everyone else, and when they do, you can face them together. But for tonight, you are allowed to lay down the telescope. Visualize yourself standing on a high cliff at dusk, looking out over a vast landscape where you can see storms gathering on distant horizons, cities rising and falling, the slow catastrophes unfolding in geological time. This is your gift and your curse, the long view, the pattern recognition, the ability to see beyond the immediate moment. For years, you have stood here on guard duty, straining your eyes against the salt spray of time, trying to warn the sleeping village below of dangers they cannot yet perceive. But now, imagine turning away from that vast and terrible vista. Behind you lies a small cottage with warm light spilling from its windows, smoke rising from its chimney in lazy spirals. This is the present moment, modest and limited, containing only what is actually here, actually now. You are allowed to enter that cottage and close the door on tomorrow. Remove the heavy cloak of responsibility you have worn for so long. Feel the weight lift from your shoulders like snow melting from the forgotten edge of a windowsill when spring, unconcerned with omens, quietly arrives. The future will arrive without your vigilant supervision. Your prophecies, like Tesla's, may be dismissed or misunderstood, but time will prove them true, regardless of whether you spend tonight rehearsing them. Even visionaries must eventually close their eyes and trust that the world will keep spinning without their constant attention. Let the distant storms gather without your observation. Let tomorrow arrive unattended. You have done enough watching, enough warning, enough carrying the weight of futures that have not yet been born. Tonight you are released from prophecy. Tonight your only responsibility is to rest, to let go of the timeline, and to sink deeply into the one moment where no foresight is needed. This peaceful, silent, singular now, where sleep waits patiently like an old friend who has always known exactly when you would finally be ready to come home. In the amber twilight of 1935, when winter shadows stretch long across the concrete canyons of Manhattan, Nikola Tesla stands at his hotel window on the 33rd floor, scattering breadcrumbs onto the narrow ledge with the same meticulous precision he once applied to, calibrating electrical frequencies. The city below pulses with his alternating current, 10 million lights flickering in rhythm, yet here in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel, the man who illuminated civilization waits in solitude for the soft percussion of wings against glass. She arrives as she has every evening for months, a white pigeon with pearl-grey wingtips, alighting on the windowsill with the quiet authority of someone who belongs. While the world rushes past 33 floors below, consumed with the urgent business of forgetting its benefactors, Tesla opens the window and extends his weathered hand. The bird steps onto his palm without hesitation, her small claws gripping his fingers with a trust so complete it borders on the sacred. "I love that pigeon," he would later confess to a bewildered journalist, his voice trembling with an emotion that made grown men shift uncomfortably in their chairs, as a man loves a woman and she loved me. The reporter, seeking headlines about death rays and wireless transmission, instead received this strange testament to affection directed toward a creature incapable of human speech, yet somehow offering what decades of human partnership had failed to provide: presence without performance, devotion without negotiation. The world, predictably, diagnosed this as the final eccentricity of a brilliant mind finally succumbing to isolation. How could a man who had conversed with the fundamental forces of the universe claim his deepest bond was with a bird? But Tesla understood what his critics could not grasp. Sometimes the purest love is the one that asks nothing in return, that exists without the exhausting architecture of human expectation. You, lying there in your own carefully constructed solitude, know this refuge intimately. You who have learned that human connection often arrives wrapped in complexity, the perpetual dance of managing expectations, interpreting subtext, performing the elaborate social rituals that leave you more depleted than nourished. Every conversation becomes calculation. What do they want? What must I give? What invisible protocols am I violating through my awkwardness or intensity? The loneliness you carry is not the absence of people, but the presence of too many demands disguised as relationship. Tesla's white dove offered revolutionary simplicity. She arrived each evening not because she owed him anything or expected sophisticated discourse, but because their meeting had become part of the rhythm of her small, honest life. She did not judge his poverty, his failed inventions, his growing reputation as an eccentric relic. In her black eyes he saw no disappointment, no confusion, no subtle withdrawal that comes when humans realize you cannot meet their unspoken needs. Consider the relationships that have sustained you through darkness. Perhaps a cat purring in your lap during depression's worst hours, asking nothing but offering steady warmth. Perhaps a houseplant thriving under your care, its green leaves unfurling in silent testament to your capacity for nurturing, when the stakes remain blessedly simple. There is no shame in finding solace in the non-human world, which operates on frequencies of honesty that human interaction has learned to complicate beyond recognition. Tonight, visualize your own white dove settling into your cupped hands, warm, weightless, asking only that you remain still. It judges nothing, demands nothing, expects nothing. In loving what cannot speak, you are freed from the exhausting labor of translation, the vigilance required to navigate human expectation. This wordless companion offers the gift Tesla discovered in his final years. Love in its purest distillation. Presence meeting presence without the terrible weight of disappointing someone who expected you to be other than what you are. The dove settles against your chest. Your breathing slows to match its gentle rhythm, and in that stillness, that blessed simplicity, you finally find the rest that has eluded you in the complicated world of human connection. Picture Tesla standing before the bewildered physicians of the New York Academy of Medicine in 1898. His tall frame silhouetted against amber gaslight, a peculiar mechanical oscillator humming quietly upon the demonstration table. The device, no larger than a Mantel clock, yet capable of shattering glass or cracking iron, represents something far more profound than mere destruction. Tonight, Tesla speaks not of breaking things apart, but of bringing them back into harmony. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, he declares with the quiet certainty of a man who has conversed with invisible forces, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The assembled doctors shift uncomfortably, trained as they are to think in terms of flesh and bone, blood and bile. But Tesla perceives deeper truths. Beneath the solid appearance of matter lies only energy oscillating at different speeds, atoms dancing in the void, the entire physical world merely frozen music waiting to be played at the correct frequency. Your body, he explains to their skeptical faces, is not a static object, but a symphony desperately out of tune. Your brain waves cascade through frequencies. Beta at 15 to 30 Hz when you lie awake with racing thoughts. Alpha at 8 to 12 when you begin to relax. Theta at 4 to 7 as you drift towards sleep, and finally delta, the slowest frequency of all, 0.5 to 4 Hz, where deep restoration occurs. But you, lying there in the darkness with anxiety humming like high-voltage wires, are trapped in beta's frantic vibration. Your nervous system broadcasting emergency signals that keep muscles tense and sleep impossibly distant. The modern world has tuned you to its own discordant frequency. Notifications pinging, screens scrolling, caffeine-driven productivity that mistakes exhaustion for achievement. You are an instrument whose strings have been wound too tight, producing only the sharp, piercing notes of hypervigilance. Tesla understood that healing was not about adding something new, but about returning to the correct resonance. Tonight, we become Tesla's oscillator, gently tuning your instrument back toward its natural frequency. Begin with your breath, the most accessible dial on this complex machine you inhabit. Inhale slowly for 4 counts, feeling your chest expand like bellows. Hold for 4 counts at the top, suspended between states. Exhale for 6 counts, longer than the inhale, signaling to your nervous system that the emergency has passed. With each breath, imagine your internal frequency dropping like a radio dial, turning slowly from static toward music. Visualize your feet first, not as flesh and bone, but as clusters of vibrating energy buzzing with residual tension. Picture an old Bakelite dial in your mind's eye. Turn it slowly to the left. Feel the vibration in your feet slow down, the high-pitched buzzing softening into a low, steady thrum that dissolves into the mattress. Move your attention upward, calves, thighs, abdomen. These muscles have been vibrating with the frequency of readiness all day. Turn the dial again, watch the needle drop. Feel tension uncoil like springs releasing stored energy. The vibration slows, the strings loosen, the note drops octave by octave until your lower body hums with the deep cello like resonance of absolute rest. Finally, bring awareness to your head, the control room where frequency runs highest. Your jaw clenched, eyes strained, forehead furrowed with the effort of thinking. Visualize soft, violet light, the color of Tesla's coils, washing over your face. As it touches your skin, muscles slacken. Turn the dial all the way down. The static of thoughts fades into white noise, sharp mental edges blurring into softness. You are no longer solid matter fighting for sleep, but a field of energy vibrating at the frequency of peace. The instrument is tuned. The music of anxiety has faded into silence, leaving only the deep resonant hum of a body finally at rest, drifting on waves of slow, dark energy toward the blessed silence where all frequencies eventually, gratefully, resolve. In the hushed sanctuary of his Houston Street laboratory, where the year 1901 settles like dust between copper coils and wooden beams, Nikola Tesla sits surrounded by the architecture of his revolutionary understanding. The air smells of ozone and possibility, that metallic tang that accompanies profound revelation. In his weathered hands rests a journal where he has inscribed words that sound like mysticism but emerge from decades of communion with electromagnetic forces. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration. He gazes through the amber-lit window at Manhattan's gaslit streets, seeing not solid buildings and hurrying pedestrians, but temporary arrangements of energy masquerading as permanence. To Tesla, the chair beneath him, the pen in his fingers, even his own aging flesh are merely light that has forgotten how to move quickly. Vibration slowed to the point where it creates the convincing illusion of substance. Everything is light, he writes, the ink flowing like liquid thought. In one of its forms it is matter, in another it is heat, in a third it is force. You, lying there in your own darkness, with the weight of accumulated anxiety pressing against your chest like stone, feel yourself as painfully, immovably solid. Your problems seem carved in granite. The unfinished work, the mounting obligations, the relationships that demand energy you no longer possess. Your body feels dense with exhaustion, every muscle a testament to the burden of carrying yourself through another day. But Tesla would look at you and see something entirely different. He would see that you are 99.9% empty space. Between each atom in your seemingly solid form stretch distances as vast proportionally as planets orbiting distant suns. What appears as flesh and bone is actually a shimmering field of particles held together by invisible forces, more void than substance, more energy than matter. The you that carries tomorrow's worries is merely a temporary configuration. Light that has agreed, for now, to hold a particular pattern. Tonight, we practice Tesla's ultimate insight not as physics but as liberation. Begin with your hands resting on the blanket, feeling their apparent weight and density. Now imagine you can perceive their true nature. Clouds of particles separated by vast spaces, held together only by electromagnetic forces. As you breathe, visualize these particles loosening their tight formation, the spaces between them expanding like a photograph, slowly dissolving in developer solution. Your hands are becoming translucent, their edges blurring into the surrounding darkness. The dissolution spreads up your arms, muscles and bones revealing themselves as temporary agreements between energy and form. But the agreement is ending. Your arms are no longer solid limbs, but fields of soft glowing particles barely distinguishable from the air that surrounds them. The transformation continues through your torso, chest, abdomen. The organs you've carried with such concern about their function and mortality. All of it resolving into its essential nature, vibration, frequency. Light slowed just enough to seem real. The heaviness lifts like morning fog, touched by sun. Your legs follow, those tired pillars dissolving into countless points of luminous energy. The boundary between your feet and the mattress becoming impossible to locate. Finally, the dissolution reaches your head, that command center of worry and calculation. Your skull is not a prison for consciousness, but merely a temporary dwelling. And now the walls are fading. Thoughts that seemed so urgent reveal themselves as brief electrical impulses, flickering sparks across neural pathways. Even these are slowing now, the intervals between thoughts growing longer, more spacious. The you that was so concerned about sleep, about tomorrow, about the accumulated weight of identity, this you is dissolving like salt in warm water. What remains is not a person, but a field of awareness, formless and peaceful, no longer bound by the exhausting illusion of solid flesh. You are not falling asleep, you are remembering what you truly are, pure energy, vibration without form, Light that has finally, mercifully, stopped pretending to be matter and returned to the infinite, peaceful darkness from which all illumination emerges and to which all illumination eventually, gratefully returns. January 7th, 1943. The storm has exhausted itself against the windows of the New Yorker hotel, leaving behind only the profound hush of snow settling into the canyons of Manhattan. In room 3327, 33 floors above the sleeping city, the radiator whispers its ancient lullaby, a soft, steady hiss like distant waves against some forgotten shore. The single bulb overhead flickers with the gentle inconsistency of a heartbeat slowing toward its final rest, casting amber shadows across scattered papers where equations sleep in their final form, no longer requiring solution. Nikola Tesla lies still upon the narrow bed, his breathing shallow as winter wind, his weathered hands folded like autumn leaves upon the thin white sheet. Around him, the air carries the faint metallic scent of ozone and the mustiness of well-worn books, the perfume of a life spent conversing with invisible forces. The pigeons have flown to their roosts. The city below hums on the current he gave them, alternating gently between light and shadow, a collective breath of 10 million souls settling into sleep. You are here with him now, in this room between worlds. Your own body lies stretched upon your bed, blankets drawn close, the glow of modern devices dimmed to darkness. 2 rooms, 2 centuries, 1 shared frequency. The transmission that began with his birth in lightning now prepares to fade into the soft static of eternal rest. Listen. Can you hear it? That gentle hum beneath all sound, not silence, but the frequency that remains when all other frequencies have dissolved. Tesla spent his life tuning the world to higher vibrations, but now both of you descend through the spectrum, dropping through beta's anxious chatter, through alpha's gentle idling, through theta's dreamy drift, settling finally into delta's deep, slow pulse. The narrative is changing now. Structure dissolves like snow against warm glass. We are moving away from story, away from biography, away from the sharp edges of meaning. Language itself grows softer, more abstract. Thoughts appear now only as faint signals on a fading screen, a number, a face, a half-remembered obligation. They rise, flicker, fall away like radio stations slipping out of range as the night train moves deeper into darkness. Imagine the great generator of consciousness winding down, copper coils cooling, the massive wheels spinning slower and slower and slower. Its hum drops an octave, then another. The vibration ceases. The needle falls to zero. Current stops flowing outward and pools, quiet and still, in the center of being. No more equations to solve, no more towers to build, no more frequencies to tune. The work is finished. What remains is simple repetition, soothing and circular. Hum, hush. Hum, hush. Signal, then silence. Signal, then silence. Each cycle softer than the last, like waves flattening as the tide retreats, leaving only wet shining sand and the vast listening sky. The white dove sleeps at the window, wings folded. Still. Tesla's hand rests quiet on the blanket, the transmission falters, not abruptly, with infinite tenderness. You are following the signal into the grey, the tethers cut, floating free, weightless, timeless, static, soft, white, snow falling. Gentle, grey, drift. The dial turns, frequency drops, signal fades, pigeon wings, radiator hiss, breathing slows, static. Hum. Silence. Around and around and around, each circle wider, fainter. Farther from the center, the screen grows dark. The tower stands in twilight. The laboratory sleeps. Static. Soft. Grey. You are the snow. The static. The gentle hum between stations. Drifting. Deep. Down. Into silence.